So I wonder why you came out tonight. You could be watching Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy, but why in the world would you have wanted to come out tonight? Other than the barbecue. Who said that? All of you should have raised your hand. Why did you come? Why did you come out tonight? Well, okay. This is why Marge has always been my favorite. And the reason I ask that is because the last time we gathered, one of the questions, and I'm going to ask Episcopalian Alice Glover to pass these out for me. I asked the last time we gathered on night 2 of this series, why does this topic matter? And on a scale of 1 to 10, what does it matter to you? And predictably, it was about half, a little under half, I should say, rated it 1 to 5. That this doesn't really touch your world all that much, but a plurality of you were 8, 9, and 10. So that, and I used that final 8, 9, and 10 as a kind of a measuring stick to why does this matter? Predictably, of the numbers of people who went 8, 9, and 10, 50% were one way and the other 50% the other in whether or not to retain the word Baptist. So Alice has passed out, or is passing out, a little thing for us to consider tonight. And let me just do a bit of a review, because you might be asking, why are we here? And what ostensibly started this whole conversation was the issue of what do we put on a church sign that was going to go right out here. Aren't you happy we didn't put that sign up now, given what's about to happen? What should it read? What would it say? Would it include the word Baptist? Our sign at the corner certainly has the word Baptist in it. Both signs actually do at the corner. But it elicited a lot of conversation. That will surprise you, I know, that it would elicit conversation in this congregation. And so that allowed us to start thinking pretty deeply about, well, what about our denominational heritage, and what about what it means to be Baptist? So that's what got us here. In the first 2 sessions, let me back up. In session 1, I tried to do a thing that said, in essence, that unlike some other traditions, religious traditions in America particularly, Baptists from the get-go have built diversity into the mix. That from the very beginning of the Baptist movement, which we can date in the beginning of the 16th century, that from the beginning there were always theological differences. Differences about the role and work of Christ, the nature of salvation, the nature of the church, understandings of humanity, and how it was that the church gathered, lived out its faith in a pluralistic world. And so I say that to you again tonight to say something I think that is pretty important. Sometimes we can believe that our slice of something is the only slice. But Baptists particularly have been very diverse. And of course, that all you have to do is pay attention, right? 63 different Baptist bodies in the United States. 63. You know the big one. And the big one is part of why we're also here, isn't it? That the Southern Baptist Convention, of which many of us in the room grew up in, myself included. That's the big one, and they make all the headlines. But there were Baptists before the Southern Baptists. And were Baptists after the fundamentalist takeover of the Southern Baptist Convention in the early 80s. And there have always been expressions of the Baptist tradition that we particularly affirm. Our friends with the Alliance of Baptists, aspects of the American Baptist Churches USA, the Association of Welcoming and Affirming Baptists. We're part of all three of those groups. But we recognize that not every Baptist and not every Baptist congregation is the same. And even within a particular Baptist congregation, you're going to have differences theologically, politically, well, maybe not here, but politically and societally. So that's the given. So one of the things I've been reflecting on as we've been working our way through this is sometimes, and this was true at every church I've pastored, and it's still true from the first time till tonight, and that is sometimes we want the tradition to be molded in our image. I'm wanting you to know that there are aspects of Baptist life that from the very beginning you would affirm, and other aspects that you wouldn't. And the beauty, for me, hooking all of that together is the idea of freedom. I've said to you in session 2 that the watchword of the Baptist tradition is faith and freedom. That freedom wasn't just a constitutional right, it wasn't just a governmental gift. That early Baptists particularly understood freedom as a gift from God. That as created in the image of God, having conscience, freedom of conscience, soul liberty, all of the things that many of you grew up hearing about in BYPU or training union or whatever you went through, that those things really did have at its base the idea that we are free people, that God creates everyone free. And one of the things you learn early in Baptist history is that when that freedom is encroached upon either through religious institutions such as the Church of England or the Southern Baptist Convention making rules against ordaining women, that pinches you. And you sense that something's not quite right. And so freedom, faith and freedom, watchwords of the Baptists. I additionally, in the last time we were together, I talked about how the separation of church and state and religious liberty was indeed the trophy of the Baptist movement, even within that difference of theological beliefs. That the Baptists were the ones championing not just toleration, not just accommodation, but the Baptists were the ones championing full and complete religious freedom for all people. People of all kinds of faith and people of no faith whatsoever. This is embodied beautifully in the life of Roger Williams, who in 1636 comes over, and within just a few months he's run out of Massachusetts Bay Colony by the Puritans, and he flees to what was then uncharted territory, and he and his band of merry followers would name it Providence, in the idea that by the providence of God, we have been brought to this place. And that place would be a place of complete freedom for all religious persuasions or no religious persuasions. That the government particularly would not have a role in dictating anyone's conscience. Now that's a big deal. It's a particular big deal when you have been historically oppressed. So that you could easily fall into the idea of, well, let's just be happy that we have the crumb shelf. Let's just be happy that that's our place. But at some risk and at some persecution, the Baptists, especially in America early on, really did suffer from the whip and from jailing and from burning. That was last time. So in the 2 previous sessions, I have tried to say that historically it's diverse, but it's also rooted in a very real theological and historical principle, and we are part of that heritage. That is the window we look out of to do church. And so a conversation about what our sign should say has gotten us to think about, I think, some really pretty good things. What does it mean? Now, I know and you know that in the popular mind today, Baptists aren't known as freedom fighters, freedom protectors, and freedom lovers. And that's part of the tension now that we live with. We understand that we're not in 1645 Providence, Rhode Island. We're at 2023, and that Baptist name has been sullied, in spite of the fact that we're so wonderful. And churches like us are so wonderful. Aren't they wonderful? But in the big picture, it's different. So what do we do? So look at what Alice passed out for you. That night, we had more than 64 barbecue eaters, I can tell you that, but not everybody participated. And we have you on camera, and you will be dealt with. I asked 9 questions, but I'm only going to highlight 3 of them for you tonight. You might remember that we asked, how long have you been part of this church, the Baptist tradition, blah, blah, blah. And then, number 3. If you had to choose one identifying word to place alongside Baptist that best describes Binkley, what would it be? And you can see that some of those answers, the number 1 winner was inclusive, a word that has its own problems though, right? Somebody tell me what the problem with the word inclusive is. What, say that again?
It also means exclusive.
Yeah, it can. Progressive. That's a good word. No one wants to put regressive, right? We're a regressive Baptist church. There, we know where they are. Open, welcoming, free, liberal, ecumenical. Some of those got just a smattering of votes. I was curious, what word would you attach alongside the word Baptist, if you could, for Binkley? And those weren't all of them. Many had just like one response. The other question, number 4, which might have been the reason why you came tonight, though nobody wanted to say that earlier, is, in your opinion, has the word become so tainted and associated with right-wing politics and fundamentalism and nationalism and hateful, bigoted speech that you would be in favor of dropping it from the name? And you can see that 26 said yes, 36 said no, and 2 people wrote yes, exclamation point, ellipsis, no, exclamation point, exclamation. I suspect that person might represent more than just that person. That there's a deep appreciation for the heritage, but you recognize that it might be problematic today. So anyway, those are the numbers. 26 said yes, and 36 said no, with 2 uncertain. I did talk just a little bit about number 7, which was the idea of how much does this matter to you? And as I said earlier, 8s, 9s, and 10s, there were plenty of those, not as many 1 through 5. Interestingly, the longer you were a Baptist, the less important this was to you. Isn't that curious? And number 9, if it were up to you, what would the church sign say? Well, I'm sorry, let me back up. Let me back up to say number 8. Is there one aspect of being Baptist that remains crucial to you for us to not lose? Not surprisingly, a lot of you said words like soul freedom, priesthood of all believers, the autonomy of the local church. Somebody stand up and tell me what the autonomy of the local church is. I got a bunch of Baptists in this room. Jessica Stokes, why aren't you standing up? Wake Div graduate Jessica Stokes, why aren't you standing up?
Autonomy of the local church means that we do not have a diocese or a system that Binkley that governs us, that we can make our own decisions as a local body as we're led and feel called to make, using our creed as Binkley Baptist, not as Alliance of Baptists or Cooperative Baptists or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What is the gift of that? What is the gift of what she just said? Are y'all awake? What is going on here? What is the gift of that? Freedom. What else? What? Self-determination. Sonny.
Well, community building, like you said.
Yeah. As Jessica rightly noted, there are some traditions where the decision-making is taken out of the hands of the local body. So if it can be the presbytery, it could be the diocese. But in our tradition, the congregation, it's called congregational polity, P-O-L-I-T-Y, that the polity, the governance of our place is self-determined, that we get to decide, which means we get to decide, a lot of things that a lot of other churches don't get to do. When Amy and I were married, our brother-in-law was on the search committee for a priest. They're Episcopalian. And he came over one day and he said, I thought we had the candidate. I said, oh yeah. I was so jazzed about her. She was so good, and I thought she was going to lead our church so beautifully. Well, what's the hang-up, I said. The bishop turned it down. I said, so y'all did all the work? Y'all did all the searching, all the vetting, y'all did all that, and then just because the bishop, well, that's their system. So we're not trying to cast aspersions on the system as much as to say it's a different system. In our system, you vote, you decide. There's no bishop, or you get to decide. That's true for the budget. That's true for every decision, every big decision that comes down the pike. So local church autonomy. People said words like freedom of conscience. Someone also said that they don't want to give up dunking newbies. There are a few of you newbies I'd like to get in the baptistry and hold you under. I'm sorry?
We couldn't hear what you said, and it sounded good.
Oh, someone said that they didn't want to lose the idea of immersion of new Christians, that if you didn't come from any other tradition and you had made a profession of faith, that the act, the ritual, the symbol of immersing oneself into the waters among the community, they wouldn't want to lose that.
Marcus, you said newbies, and some of us thought you said nudies.
Diane, that might have been a Diane thing. Diane. See, I'm just so glad a bishop didn't hear that. And then, number 9. If it were up to you, what would the church sign say? So look at this list. Look at this list. Now, when you ask people these questions, what's going to happen? People are going to answer them. And so some of them got more than one vote, of course, and I put them in by numbers to the side. And you can see that some leave the word out, some include the word, some put some of those adjectives that I named earlier alongside the name of the church. There was a vote for the Seymour Lee Memorial Church. And Howard and Lillian want us to know that they are still alive. They're not memorialized. And there she is. In fact, Lillian just had a birthday, and we should sing happy birthday to Lillian, shouldn't we? Shouldn't we sing happy birthday? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lillian. Happy birthday to you. Yes. Happy birthday, Lillian. Linda Bourne also had a birthday. And anybody else in the room just have a birthday? Like within the last week or two? Anybody else? Larry Nielsen had a birthday. Happy birthday, Larry. So if you look over that list, you're going to see some real diversity. I want you to look through the list right now. And where you are, I want you to stand up and say why you are drawn to one of those. Look at the list. And then you're going to want to make your stump speech for it. Buck Horton.
Yeah, I just wondering, who in the world proposed to Bink?
DeBink. I think it was Don. I think it was Don. Don is taking credit for it. Don.
What I was going to say was that the one that I favored was the Binkley, an ecumenical church in the Baptist tradition. But at $100 a letter, I will go something
For the letterhead, that's perfect. But for the side, right, okay. All right. Somebody else. New Sue.
So that's Binkley, all is welcome here.
Yeah. All are welcome here, she said. Binkley, did you say Binkley Church, all are welcome here? Yeah.
Not the church, but Binkley, called the very last one.
On the last one on the first page.
Yeah, on the first page, the last one, Binkley, all are welcome here. Okay.
Because the first time I came, you were not a Baptist to me.
Those are fighting words, Sue. But this is very instructive. So you knew of us because of Ann Barnes and the fact that your son and daughter-in-law lived next to Ann and Billy. Well, I think Billy had died before they moved in. But anyway, next door neighbors. And so you knew about us through them, and then you started watching online, right? And by watching online, you got a flavor of us, and then your daughter-in-law encouraged you to come to worship, and you did. And what did you experience that day?
I felt like I was welcome and that I didn't have to prove anything.
But notice she said, but y'all weren't Baptist. Now, that's not about Sue. What does that reflect? What? What? No. It reflected a stereotype that our slice of the tradition was unknown to you. Thank you for sharing that, Sue. Do what? That our particular denomination or our particular way of being Baptist, that wasn't known to you. So you knew that there were other Baptists like us? That's what I'm getting at. I didn't think you knew that there were any other churches like ours. Okay, all right. Thank you for sharing, Sue. Yes, Carol?
So, my first introduction to Binkley was my neighbor, Alice, saying, "Oh, we're Buddhists as much as we are Baptists." And And so I got involved with the Black Lives Matter, but I stayed outside for a long time. And then, I don't know what it finally was, I said, all right, let me come into church, see what's going on here. I grew up Methodist, I've always been Methodist. And just listening to Marcus and what was being said and what was talked about, I said, whoa, this is not the Baptist church that I would, that I have heard of before. And I was surprised, pleasantly surprised. And so one day when you were calling new members and I just kind of stood up there, I think it surprised us all. But I'm happy to be here and be a part of this church. Whatever it's called, but I do like Binkley Community Church. Because to me, it's really about community and bringing people in and inviting people in with our signs and everything that we do.
Yeah. So she also said something, Carol's also said something pretty revealing, and that is that for a long time, you wouldn't have come in, but Buddhist Episcopalian Alice helped. But our public witness to Black Lives Matter got you on campus. And then once on campus, you went through the doors of the sanctuary. Just out of curiosity, were you aware that there were Baptists like us before? Okay. Thank you. Somebody, yeah, David.
So, my vote, and I voted for Binkley Baptist Church. I've been around long enough to know what the Baptists used to be like. I spent a lot of time as a youth in that type of community. Just because some people capture the word Baptist and sully it with all sorts of, evangelical Christian nationalism stuff doesn't mean we have to surrender the name Baptist just because they're doing stuff with it. We can claim our name, we can claim our ownership of the word Baptist. So that's what I vote for. That's what I want to keep here. Binkley, I'm proud to be a Baptist, and I'm not going to run away from it.
That man is a graduate of Training Union. Where'd you grow up? In a Baptist church?
And Memphis.
Okay.
Bayleaf Baptist Church in North Raleigh.
Okay.
And St. Mark's United Methodist in North Raleigh.
Okay. which that combination might have made us pretty appealing to you. Yeah, okay, thank you. Alice, Buddhist Episcopal.
I think the hard thing for me is that it's tough enough to get people interested in coming to church, period. And so when you add Baptists to this, I get what you're saying, but you have to deconstruct all the time.
Yes.
So it's an extra layer that makes it harder to be able to attract people to what we're about.
Yeah. Well, along those lines, the word church, we talked about this last time, the word church itself for many people is problematic. So community, somebody mentioned community a while ago, that's kind of where things are going. So thank you. Somebody back, Sybil.
Well, I've got to admit, we came here once in 1981 when we first moved back to Chapel Hill, and I felt so strongly that I could not be identified as Baptist that we didn't come back till 2005. And I love this church, but even though I knew there was a lot of variety in the Baptist church, and I grew up in Chapel Hill and knew Binkley was great, I associate so many negative things with some Baptists that it was hard for me to think about being associated for a long time.
Yeah.
So I think we scare people away by using the word Baptist.
How many of you resonate with what Sybil just said? I think there are lots of people in this room, Sybil, who would concur with that. Yeah, thank you. Sonny?
Well, I've also wanted to redeem words. Southern woman, certain kinds of evangelical. I'd love to redeem that word. I think.
What word?
Evangelical.
Evangelical.
We've let others observe that. But I've not been really successful doing that. But of the list, I would support Binkley Memorial Church with the tagline of all are welcome. And a couple of reasons on that. One is, I can't quite imagine us going to the Binkley family and taking Olin T. Binkley's name out. And we still support much of what he supported. And that's why he got the name to begin with. Now, Olin T., we could keep Binkley without having to have, the entire name. I also think there's something about the word memorial that says there's some respect for tradition, or there's some respect for what has been, and it's not just a fly-by-night new kind of thing. And yet, if you put all are welcome on there, I know nowadays we are using that a lot, but it is still a fairly modern piece in its definition today. So I just think Binkley Memorial Church, along with the all are welcome, and it's not 200. I don't know how many letters that would be. But I think it does respect both tradition as well as being progressive.
Yeah. In a very real sense, every church is a memorial church, right? And in our case, it's linked with a person in particular. I can remember having a conversation with Bob Seymour, and the suggestion had come up that we rename it after him. And Bob was very much opposed to that. And I said, why? And he said, for the same reason that a lot of people today don't know anything about Binkley, Olin T. Binkley. In years to come, decades to come, people would not know him either, which was, again, a pretty good observation. By the way, what's the T in Olin T? Anybody know? You'll get the undying respect of the entire room if you know this. No. And if you bought a book, you cannot look up in the concordance. Trivette. Trivette. Well, Dorothy.
For a long time.
All right, I'm like, Binkley Church, come on in. In fact, I think I wrote it, maybe I didn't. But if I didn't, I should have. And the reason I like it is it's short, it's friendly, it wouldn't cost a lot. It sounds like a TV show. You remember Come On Down? That's what it sounds like. So I like that.
Okay, thank you. Maria?
I like Binkley Community Church or Binkley Church. I think I went to a Baptist seminary.
Where'd you go to seminary, Maria Palmer?
Southern.
Southern
In Louisville,
Seminary. We have
Kentucky.
2 other Southern Seminary grads right over here.
Yeah, back when.
Back in the day, back when you could say you went there.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I think we may be proud and want to redeem the name, but honestly, it's not up to us what that name means to other people. My husband had a Confederate flag in his car as a teenager when I met him, and he insisted to me, he's from rural North Alabama. The county where his parents lived seceded from Alabama when Alabama seceded from the Union. They didn't have any slaves. He insisted he was Southern and proud, and that was all it meant, until he met some black people in college, and he was disavowed of some of those ideas through some enlightenment. But what it meant to him, it didn't matter. At some point, he removed it, and he was embarrassed. And I think what Baptists in general have done for gay folks, for different minorities, it communicates something to people. So we may not want it to, and we may be proud of our heritage, and I'm forever grateful to the great Baptist leaders, for the freedom and everything. And the professors at my seminary were saints, but it means something to people, and along with the freedom, there's also oppression, because those thousands of little churches where the congregation votes, they voted for some really hurtful things and continue to do it. So I don't know. I have strong feelings, and I'm proud of being Baptist when I have 10, 15 minutes to explain to somebody who asks me, So I don't know.
How would you have liked to have been in the room when Michael confessed that to Maria? Meredith?
I've been thinking about,
Could you stand? Yeah, thanks.
I've been thinking about the arguments or the positions people are taking about how our sign communicates to other people what kind of place we are. I tend to be on the side of holding on to the name Baptist and saying they can't take that away from me. I'm thinking also about other progressive Baptist churches like Watt Street and Poland, our sister church in Maceió, Igreja Batista do Pinheiro in Brazil, and thinking that we're sort of partners with them, and I don't want to let go of their hands in any way, thinking that taking the word name Baptist would be in a sense saying, we relinquish, they can have the name, you all go on holding on to it, but we relinquish. That's how it seems to me.
That's a very nice word, because it does connote that even though we are autonomous and independent, we're also in partnership with other congregations. And would we be abandoning them? That's, I think, what you were getting at. Adams?
I like the name Binkley Ecumenical Baptist Church. We came on Binkley, we came on to Baptist, but we say we're a big tent as opposed to a narrow plain.
Yeah. If there was ever an ecumenical church, it's this one. You all are ecumeniacs from Presbyterian and Methodist and Catholic backgrounds, and the whole mix of all the Protestant traditions. represented even in this room tonight. So, somebody.
I'm just going because the town council is voting and I'm representing the church. We're Justice United in support of the St. Paul's Village. So that's why.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Okay. Somebody else had their hand up. Yes, Janet.
I wanted to offer just a viewpoint that it may be that what we call ourselves as a church is different from what we put on a sign.
Yes.
And I'm aware that Marcus worded the question of what would you put on a sign, which I'm a little sensitive about because I think I'm the only one present in the room who actually served on the sign committee in 2018 and 2019. And for those of you who weren't here, I'll give you just a 5-second summary of what happened, which is a lot longer than 5 seconds. But the committee put forward Binkley Church All Are Welcome because it didn't fit to put all the other words in there that everybody liked. So when we get to a point of building a sign, which we will be, I'm sure, sometime soon, we will either have to have a really tall sign or a really wide sign because there are logistics involved and, as Don pointed out, price involved in putting together a sign. So I think deciding what we are as a church, what we call ourselves as a church, could be different than what we choose to put on a sign. They may not have to be the same.
Yeah, that's an outstanding point. Let me add this wrinkle to what you said, which is absolutely correct. We already have 2 existing signs, though. And those existing signs say Binkley Baptist Church.
And now, just a corollary that we were at the time planning a sign after on Fordham, and we wanted people to be able to see it as they drove by.
Yeah, I think didn't I say that? I thought I said that. Right, okay. Joy?
I'm just wondering, is the conversation about what goes on the sign and you would still be maintain the Baptist affiliations? Because for me, as a gay person, I'm very distrustful of churches that just say blah, blah, blah church. If God will go on their website and find their belief statements, who are they affiliated with?
Yes.
And a lot of times they are Baptists, trying to hide the fact that they're Baptists to get people in the door. So if our sign says church and people come in and see Baptist, to me, if that were me, I would be a red flag that you're trying to hide something. Because that's what I think Baptist is what Sue was saying.
Yes.
And I don't know about Baptists like Binkley, so I feel like it's a little bait and switch kind of thing that could scare people off if they think that we're portraying ourselves one way and they get in the door and they think we're something else if they don't stick around enough to give us a try. Right. So that's why I'm very Baptist through and through, and I am always in favor of keeping the Baptist and reclaiming it and not relinquishing it just as a political statement that you are the ones that are diminishing the word Baptist. We are living into what Baptists truly are and not wanting to let that go.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you. Collins?
I don't have a clear, strong position on this whole thing, but when Adams used the phrase, as we heard it, ecumenical Baptist church, I realize that when I'm trying to explain us to somebody new, that's exactly the phrase I use. For a brief one-sentence description. So I obviously think the word Baptist needs some modification. And ecumenical does it. Its only negative is it's not a kitchen table word.
Yeah.
But I just think anyway, that's all right.
We have time for 2 more, and then I'm going to summarize some things. So, Jim Hefner.
I went to training union too. Just an observation. We have at the podium a sign that says Binkley Church with a slug line of Chapel Hill. Where'd that come from? My point is this: when we decide what we are, that's what we are, and you're saying who you are in your name. You use slug lines all over the place. It can be Binkley Baptist Church outside, but on everything that we have online, on stationery, we can have a slug line that says who we are. And we are all of these words, a lot of these words, which I think would help resurrect Baptists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're suggesting that all signage needs to be consistent. Absolutely. And as to how this got here, I wish I could tell you, other than the fact that we just needed something and that's what we did. But there was no forethought of malice in keeping the word Baptist. It just got ordered. So, one more comment. Linda.
I just want to say that we have two Southern Baptist churches here. Hillsong used to be Carborough Baptist. It's cooperative? Oh, okay. And then Summit Church, who has two huge services every Sunday at East Chapel Hill High, is Southern Baptist, but it's Summit Church. And Joyce.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. So as I sat down at the table, Tim asked me, so what are you going to be fighting hard to keep and retain the word Baptist? Here's my perspective. Whatever the sign does or does not say, or whatever consistent signage, letterhead, whatever, I know that this congregation is going to remain a congregational church in its polity. That we're going to continue to function as we have for these 65 years. Meaning, ain't nobody telling us what to do but us. That we're going to decide what we do, including this issue. And that's part of the beauty of the whole system. Now, when Joy said that she's Baptist through and through, I'm in that same pot. And it's not just because I grew up where I grew up and where I went to seminaries, and it isn't just that. That the idea that gave birth to the movement. And you would expect a church historian type guy to want to go there, right? That I really do go there for a sense of what it means to uphold soul freedom, religious liberty, the separation of church and state. Not the separation of faith and politics. That's a whole different thing. But that the state, Maria mentioned the word oppressors, that with freedom you also have oppressors. She's absolutely right about that, and many of us experienced that in the early 1980s. Being told that we weren't Christian enough, we weren't Baptist enough, we didn't believe the Bible enough, on and on and on and on and on. And that just was not true. And so where I come out on it is, I am a Baptist and I'm going to be a Baptist, but maybe more important than being Baptist is being what? A follower of Jesus. And the tradition, whether one was Methodist or Presbyterian or Church of Christ or whatever one was, that's what you were being, I think, formed in. And the tradition is the window at which you look out into the world and you see yourself in the world. And the next installment of this is on Sunday morning during the Sunday school hour on October the 15th, when Bill J. Leonard, the initial dean of the Wake Forest University Divinity School, my PhD advisor in Louisville, and dear friend, will be doing a forum here, and then we'll be preaching in the morning service. So that will kind of bring these 4 sessions to a close. But there's going to be more work. You think we're done? Then you haven't been at Binkley very long. But we will want to come to some shared understanding. I hope you'll hang in there with us, and I should have included this on the survey last time. Whatever we decide, is this going to find you walking out the door? And I really hope that won't be the case. Because once you got in, I guess you kind of like us a little bit, right? Whether you've been here for 55 years or 5 months or 5 years, that once in, you've understood the kind of community that we are trying to be. So I really thank you for your participation in these 3 sessions. I will be away on the 15th, but Amy's going to be taking notes, and if you misbehave, she's going to report you. Having a guest like Bill is a real treat for our church.